Welcome to Impacting Your Future, a podcast from Wheatso UK with me, Rosa Doherty. Today's guest works at the front line of one of the most urgent issues facing families, children's mental health. And as a parent myself, this is a conversation I have a real personal stake in. Saskia Joss is a child therapist and anxiety specialist, helping young people and their parents navigate an increasingly complex emotional landscape. She also works alongside her mother, the broadcasting legend Vanessa Feltz, and together they host a podcast, Help, My Child is Anxious. That is very much worth listening to. Her work is rooted in deep empathy, but also in practical tools that can help parents navigate real problems. In this episode, we explore the rise in anxiety among children, the role of parents in building resilience, and how small shifts at home can have a profound impact on a child's future. We also talk about the realities facing Jewish families today, where concerns around safety are part of everyday life, and where school children are preparing for worst-case scenarios. We discuss how parents can support their children and themselves through that anxiety. I was particularly struck by Saskia's generosity and openness, even when reflecting on deeply personal experiences. Saskia's own approach reflects Wheatso's own commitment and expertise in child development.
Have a chat about mental health and the future.
Mental children, anxiety.
If there's anything I can talk about, it's children and anxiety and mental health and being Jewish and the future. I'm in.
Great.
Sounds perfect.
So you're obviously known for being a child psychotherapist.
I'm a child therapist. Yeah.
And you've got a podcast about anxiety.
Yes.
Help My Child is Anxious.
Help My Child's Anxious.
Which you do with your mum.
Yes.
Which it must be a really interesting working dynamic.
Yeah, it's a very strange dynamic for us in some ways, because obviously she's the mum and she's sort of like the boss in some ways. Obviously we get on really well, but she is, she's the boss in some ways. And so when we did the podcast, there's something interesting, which is obviously she still gets to do all the things she's really good at, which is like hosting, talking, asking questions. But then she has to sort of stop and listen to me talk about anxiety, because that's what I do. I'm a specialist in working with children with anxiety, and the podcast is about children's anxiety. So she sort of there's this irregular dynamic, which is where I get to sort of slightly be more in charge because I'm the person who knows about it a bit.
Expert, yeah.
And I think if anything, it's just making us closer, because there's this feeling that we both bring this special thing to the podcast. Like, for example, when we do a podcast, when we interview someone about their anxiety, so we've been doing some with some journalists and some famous people and some influencers, where we talk about their children's anxiety or their anxiety. I get really nervous when we have to ask them the questions at the beginning, because it's just not like exactly what you're doing. I'm not necessarily very good at it. It's not what I'm expecting to do. And so she kind of like comes back in and is like the expert of like hosting things and asking the right question and getting them in the right mood. And then at the end I'm like, and did anyone want to know anything about therapy? Because that's why I'm here. And so it equals out. It works very well.
She's a perfect person to do that with, isn't
she? It works well. So we both get to bring the thing that we're most good at or most like doing, which is talking to people, both of us like that. And then that she gets to be the sort of like boss and organizer and the sort of carrier of the podcast. And I come in and I say the things that I've learned, basically. So that works very well.
If we could start at the beginning a little bit, is that something that you always wanted to do? Did you know
absolutely
it was going to be your path?
Not at all. No. So I was after university. So I did a gap year in Israel. I lived in Israel for a year. I did it with Noam. I was big into Noam when I was a child. I did year course. I did summer camps. I did absolutely everything. I was in Noam from when I was 10 till when I was 21 or something like that. And I went every summer and I did all that sort of thing. And that's definitely where I learned to sort of where I realised that working with children is the thing that I want to do. So I learned that through being Jewish, doing Jewish stuff, which I think maybe people didn't know about me. So I found my passion for working with kids by being part of NUM and doing Jewish things. And then I went to, and then I did my gap year and I worked with Magen David Adom, and I thought that I was going to become a paramedic. Yeah. Having done Magen David Adom in Israel on year course, I really thought I was going to become a paramedic. And I came back to London and I did a ride along on an ambulance in London. Someone organised for me to do a ride along. Yeah. And I had never been more scared in my entire life. And then I just, for lots of reasons, there were lots of awful, scary things that happened that evening. And it was nothing like working on an ambulance in Israel, which you would assume is really chaotic and panicky. It's not. It's incredibly organised, thoughtful, methodical. The ambulances are kitted out to in the most incredible equipment.
I've done it.
It's unreal. It's the most incredible thing. And you can see if you live in a country that has a huge amount of chaos, the services that support them have to be so above and beyond professional and exceptional. And that's what Magnum is like. And when I came back to the UK to work on the UK ambulance service, I'd never seen anything more chaotic. I was genuinely scared for my life multiple times during one evening. At one point, we were running down the motorway trying to catch a man on drugs, like trying to, it was absolute madness. And I just thought, right, okay, I definitely can't do this as a job. It was what I was really expecting to do. And I was like, I'm going to be a paramedic. And then I really could not be a paramedic in the UK. Maybe if I'd made Aliyah, I could have maybe been a paramedic. But I couldn't be a paramedic in the UK. And so I went to university and I did education and politics. And then I did the Jewish Teacher Training Partnership course to become a teacher. And I was a primary school teacher. I worked mostly with reception in early years. And I worked in Jewish schools. And then I moved to the school that I work at now. And I was beginning to retrain to become a therapist for adults. And then I saw that in the school that I worked at, and I still work there, that the need was so great that for some children, a 30th of the attention that the teacher can offer is sufficient. That will be enough to get them through school. They will be able to pass their exams. And for other children, what is going on in their lives is so extreme and acute and scary and worrying and terrible and frightening that a 30th of attention for most of the day is just insufficient for them to keep it all together and hold it all together. And I decided at that point that I would train to become a child therapist. And I was very lucky that my school supported me to qualify. So they didn't pay for my course, but they let me do all my hours in the other school that my head runs. So I managed to requalify as a therapist for children. And then a year now it's nearly 2 years ago, I was doing a talk at a school, which is something that I do. I lecture parents at schools about anxiety, resilience, things like that. If you are a school in London, please get in contact. And I was just doing a lecture about anxiety. And when I came off the school stage, the assembly stage, a lady came up to me and said, I'm a publisher for Headline Books. Would you like to write a book for us about anxiety? And I had never thought I would write a book. I'm incredibly dyslexic. I just thought it was not in a million years would I write a book or really do anything that was sort of public facing. I was just very happy doing little therapy sessions in my little room in my garden and just getting on with it. And I wrote a book and I couldn't really believe it. It came out in April. It's called Help My Child's Anxiety is Giving Me Anxiety. And it's about all the different things that children go through from about 2 until about 25 that cause them anxiety, from separation to starting school, different issues that happen at school like exams and bullying, EBSA, which is now a massive thing, which is children who are too scared to go to school because of anxiety, covers divorce. It covers
basically school refusal.
So we now call it EBSA, which stands for Emotionally Based School Avoidance. And
so that sounds like a change in and of itself.
Well,
in terms of what we like when we were at school, it was school avoidance. It was
school refusal and the feeling that children were sort of aggressively and nastily avoiding going to school. And now we can understand that no, children really are avoiding going to school. They're obviously going through stuff that stops them getting through the door. And so the book covers all those things. And then because of the book, I was invited to do a podcast with my mum at Global, which is called Help My Child's Anxious. And it's a cracking podcast. I love doing it. We go every week. We talk about anxiety, which is the thing I am most comfortable talking about. And I can see that it's helping people. People message me every week saying the episode about panic attacks has just helped. My daughter had one when we went out at the weekend, and now I've been able to help her. And the most exciting thing is it's kind of worldwide in a really surprising way that I wasn't expecting at all. We're the #1 parenting podcast in the Solomon Islands, which probably means there's one person listening to us in the Solomon Islands and they're really enjoying it. Big up to you in the Solomon Islands. But it's a surprise. All of it's a surprise. I was basically just planning to be firstly a paramedic and then a primary school teacher, and then here I am doing all this funny stuff, and I'm really enjoying it. But it's definitely a surprise. And
was there like a particular defining moment in your life or your childhood that you think led you to this place,
to being a therapist? I'm not really sure if there was one particular moment, but I definitely always was the person that friends would come to like talk things through. And I think really the actual thing is, I think there was I was a reception class teacher, and when you teach reception, the children make more progress in that year than they'll make in any other school year. They come in not being able to read and write. The children at the beginning of the year basically fall asleep in the afternoon because they're just like too little to be at school really. And you put everything.
My son's just gone through reception.
So you put in, as a teacher, you put in everything. You put your blood, your sweat, your tears, your ideas, the stories you learned as a child, the songs you sang in school, everything everything that you ever learn, you're sort of trying to pull it back to the front of your brain and give it to these children to give them the best start to education. And I'd like fall in love with these kids. I was like, I didn't literally want to take them home, but I would put myself and everything I had into sort of like raising them for that short time. And then you had to give them back at the end of the year. And I absolutely hated it. Yeah. And also you then hear their next year teacher like shouting at them.
And much more serious.
Yeah, and they weren't suddenly allowed to go to the loo in the lessons. And then they'd all be just, having an accident, and they didn't understand that obviously wasn't a nice thing for them. And I felt so protective over them. And I just thought, I won't be able to do this many times. The thing where you just give them back, I won't be able to do that, because it's just too painful to put so much in something and then just give it back. And so I decided to requalify at that point. I think it was my second class. There was this incredible class. It was at Wolfson Hillel, and they were absolutely the most beautiful class in the world. They were so gorgeous. And when I had to give them back, I just thought I won't really be able to do this many more times. It's just too painful to give these children to someone else. They're too lovely, and I'm invested, and I want to know how they're doing. And often their parents still get in contact with me and tell them how they're doing. They all just finished. I think they all just finished either their AS levels this year, I think, or their GCSEs. Wow, so it's quite a long time ago. But I hear from quite a lot of those parents.
Does that giving them back not happen in a kind of therapeutic context as well?
It does, but in therapy you are relieved. You're relieved that they're doing well enough and that their life has improved enough that they don't have to keep coming. So they've come to you because they're in an emergency situation. Parents get in contact with therapists because they can't think of what to do themselves. They've run out of options. It's too much. It's overwhelming. They're so worried. And then the children come to you for therapy, and you put things in place, and you speak to their school, and they get into a relationship with you, and then they get better. They feel better. The parents are less panicked. There's less shouting at home. Everyone's managing better. The sleep is better for everyone. Then they don't have to come. And the feeling of relief of finishing with clients at the end of therapy is totally different, in my opinion, to the way that, because you don't see them as much. What you're really hoping to do is give them the tools that they need to do the things they have to do every day. So if they're too worried to go to school, I want them to be able to go to school. So I'm trying to work on things they need to be able to go to school. And so when they go to school and they don't have to come to therapy, I've solved the problem. I've done my job. I've helped them manage enough that they can do something by themselves. And that feels like a huge win. And even if it's not totally fixed, they know they can always come back. They know that I will always find time for those children I've seen before in the families I've worked with. I will always find time for them. So they know they can come back. So the feeling that they won't ever be in such an emergency state again because they can come back and we'll try again means that I can be happy with the fact that they're leaving, and they can be happy with the fact they're leaving. And it just feels different.
It's different, You know that you're improving their life in some way.
Well, you hope you will, and you've seen enough progress and enough calm in that situation return that it's not battle stations anymore. Days are passing and people are not overwhelmed to the point where they can't function. That's a huge improvement. It means people are living rather than surviving. And if you can help a family to do that, then everyone does better.
Definitely. And so anxiety is obviously this big word that gets
huge.
Thrown around, I think, quite a bit. What actually is it in terms of what is it when it's actually happening, and what is it not? Because I think a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm anxious."
But anxiety, So anxiety is the feeling that comes into our bodies when our body assesses that there is a threat. So if my body assesses that there will be something dangerous happening, and it will make cortisol, which makes me feel anxious. Originally, the anxiety was there to keep us alive in prehistoric times. It's a sort of evolutionary process to keep people alive. And it's designed, when we feel threat, when we feel in danger, when we feel close to death, to create a big whoosh of cortisol, so we're more likely to check what we're doing and not do something dangerous. That's the point of anxiety. But over time, when we weren't running from, stegosauruses or whatever, the feeling that emotional things are just as dangerous, like failing an exam or going on a date with someone that you really fancy can make you feel really anxious. It's because importance begins to feel like danger over time. How important something is to you, how seriously that thing will affect your life, can lead to a feeling in the body of danger. And so anxiety is present in all people, in adults and children, when there's a feeling in the body that something going on could lead us to a dangerous situation. And the thing that's often confusing for parents is they're like, it's just a birthday party. Why would that make them feel like they're in danger? And we have to work that out. And then once we've taken down the pressure, we've shown that child they're not in danger, most children will be able to go to a birthday party with no problem. So we're trying to fairly assess why someone's anxious, why their body has decided that they're in sort of a danger mode, and help them calm down to get over it is inherently what I do as a job. I work out what was the danger and how do we displace the danger, put something in the way of the danger, show a child something isn't dangerous so that they can then function without the cortisol continuing to make them check everything more carefully.
And what how would you how would you help a parent distinguish between whether their child has anxiety or they just have kind of normal everyday worries about things?
I would say they're all probably quite similar. You're allowed to be worried about worrying things. So worry and anxiety are very close. They're very similar because anxiety is meant to make you feel worried. It's meant to make you worry that you'll make a mistake or worry that you'll miss something. That thing where you're like waiting for you're on a foreign country and on a train and you could miss the stop. The anxiety that you'll miss the stop and then you'll miss your plane or whatever. It's doing it on purpose. It's making you extra vigilant, extra aware, hypervigilant, so that you don't miss the thing you're meant to do. That's what cortisol does. It puts you on alert so you don't miss the thing you're meant to do. So children will feel anxious about lots of things to varying degrees. The worry is a little bit of cortisol and anxiety is a lot of cortisol. And so you're meant to feel worried about worrying things. You're meant to feel worried about important things. If your child becomes panicky and unable to do the things they are meant to do, like go to school, like go to the dentist, they just can't write a letter to someone because they're worried their handwriting is not good enough. That's when we would say a child would need help with their anxiety. The idea that the things that they are meant to do and are easy to do are no longer possible because the anxiety is too much. That's when it moves in from just like general worries to sort of anxiety you might need treatment for. Yeah,
it's interesting. I always think about this is that period just after you've had a baby and being like, I just remember being completely consumed with panic about, and it is panic, that kind of like irrational, like I'm taking the baby down breathing. The stairs, I'm gonna fall, like at the top of the stairs. I would literally envisage myself tumbling down the stairs with this baby, or like walking across a bridge. I get it. There's very few environments where that sort of happens to me. But it's, and whenever I've talked to mums, it's quite a common thing of this, like, situations post having.
And that's because the amygdala, the center of the brain, we've got one on either side of these they're shaped like nuts on the inside of your brain, and they grow bigger after you have a baby, which means you're more sensitive to danger because you're inherently checking for danger for more than one person, not just your own danger, but danger to the baby. And the whole point is that our brain will change after birth so that we can be a better protector because we'll be more aware of danger. But that will obviously, as a change in your brain, feel absolutely kooky because suddenly you're like hyper aware. What's that noise? What's that sound? The wind has changed. It's colder in here. Wrap the baby. It's part of the process that we've learned over time to protect our young, like animals, because that's what we are.
And rationally, I know that I'm not like.
Very rarely likely to fall down the stairs
while holding a baby. It's probably.
But also, if you did, it would be terrible. So you're rightly worried about something that could be bad, and that's normal. It's just interesting that when we have babies, we then see more danger in the world in some ways. If you think about when you're a teenager and you just walk down the road with your phone out and you're not even looking, cross the road without looking if it's a red light.
Walked home at night.
Exactly.
All of these
the idea is that the more aware you are and the more you have to protect, the more there is to notice.
And I guess, how do you, I think one of the things that parents are really conscious of are not kind of like transporting those anxieties, our own anxieties, onto our kids. How do you?
I would say that generally I'm not a naturally anxious person, which is so funny that I ended up doing all this anxiety stuff. I wonder whether my ability to have perspective on it is part of the thing that helps me break it down for other people. That I don't have any like irrational phobias, for example. I'm not scared of flying. I'm not scared of spiders. The kinds of things that most people are scared of, I'm luckily not. Do I want to die? Also no. And so the understanding that sort of death is the thing that's like the spectre behind all of our other fears is, I can understand that very well. And I think we will all have anxieties that we're going to pass on to our children. And as a Jewish person, the last few years has brought up a huge amount of anxieties for all of us. The idea that, you couldn't protect your children from what was going on in Israel, that things from over there would come over here and be near your family, has been highly anxious making for everybody. And you can see that the Jewish community has become more panicky, more reactive.
Have you seen
more
that
protective?
In your work?
I regularly have worked with children in the last few years who have huge fears of being taken as a hostage. It's not even they don't even cover it up or say being taken, because we all now have this word hostage. It's been very common for me to have children coming for sessions who talk about being taken as a hostage. They've seen all the signs, which is the point of the signs, to see them, and they're now fearful that they might be taken as a hostage. I've seen lots of children who are very panicky about the intruder alarms at schools. If they go to a Jewish school, they're going to have to practice intruder alarms, hide under the desk, watch as their teachers barricade the doors. I mean, it's a practice, but it's a practice in case something happens, and the feeling that something could happen, the imminent danger of something happening, is exactly the point of anxiety. It's to protect you from imminent danger. So the idea that our Jewish children have to spend their time practicing for imminent danger, it would be very strange if they weren't more anxious. If they weren't anxious because of it, it would be extremely weird, because we're saying to them, there could be an imminent danger. The imminent danger could come and get you. We're practicing in case someone tries to get you. Yeah. It would be very strange if they were like, that's great, fine, lovely, I love coming to school.
How in a school context, how do you advise Jewish schools in that context to, because obviously it is anxiety making.
I think, one of the reasons that I eventually moved out of Jewish schools, and there were lots of reasons, I got a really great job and that was the main reason, but was that I also found the pressure of intruder alarms incredibly overwhelming, and the idea that you would have to be the person that sort of lay in front of the children. I was ready to do it, but the feeling of it was awful. And I think that schools are managing it well, because they do have to do it. We can't just as Jewish people we can't ever rest on our laurels and assume these things won't happen. What happened in Manchester only a few weeks ago is a really good example that anything can happen at any time, and that's exactly why we've all been practicing. Thank God, so far there's never been anything that actually got inside a Jewish building in this country, and those are the facts that we can tell children. The way that we support children with anxiety is by providing sufficient information, facts, the feeling of facts that will allow their thinking brain, to relax around it, and then we do things that make their body relax. So we're thinking, how do I relax my child's thinking brain? By giving them enough food that the brain can digest and relax itself. So there's never been an attack in a Jewish school in this country. We're just doing it to make sure that you're safe. We're only doing it for the purpose of having a really good plan in case. And the in case is so unlikely, but we want to make sure that we're not taken off guard. That's the point. Yeah. And you do it so successfully, we know it'll be great anyway. And the schools are so clever, and CST, and we've got a fabulous security guard outside. And we're giving our children the facts that allow their brain to switch off about the fear. Yeah. And then we also spend time relaxing our children when they get home from school on a day when they've had a drill. I would wrap them in a blanket. I give them a lovely, not in a blanket, take them out the blanket, give them a lovely long bath. I think, am I doing enough to remind their body that it's actually safe? Yeah. Because we get our signals about safety from our entire body. My body and your body are designed to check for danger at all times, even while we're asleep. And it notices change in temperature, it notices change in light, it notices change in sound, it notices change in movement. If the people outside the room that we're in now start running around, you and I will immediately sense that there's something going on and think, what are we meant to do now? And that's designed to keep us alive. We're doing it on purpose. So if we can show our children that the environment they're in at home when they come home from school, and this is in a situation when they've been anxious, but also generally that our house is this like quiet, safe cocoon, that they come home to us, they get this time to reset at the end of the day and then start the day the next day with lower cortisol, with more ability to manage, with more ability to assess threat properly, because they have had this time to sort of like recharge and sort of put everything back, like bring the dials back to zero, so they can then start again.
And how do you strike the balance between, obviously, because in terms of anxiety, resilience is obviously really important as a child, as an adult. We want to protect our children, but we also need to give them a bit of room, don't we?
Resilience is the ability to know that you feel something and do it anyway. Yeah. And that's hard. So I'm scared about this exam, but I'm going to do it anyway. I am worried about flying because I'm nervous that the plane will crash, but I really have to go to my sister's wedding in Australia and I'm going to go.
Yeah.
That's resilience. It's not having any feelings. It's not finding things hard.
Yeah.
It's finding things hard and doing it anyway. And we teach children that over time by showing them that they can regularly do things that are difficult that they didn't expect, sort of having this catalogue in our brains of all their great achievements and reminding them, but actually last week you did manage that thing you said you couldn't. And, you know, you are the kind of person who really, when they try hard, they really do it, don't you? You're like that, aren't you? You really are so good at that sort of thing. And, you know, I know that you really wanted to be able to draw that thing, and I saw you practice and now you can. You are that person. You're that kid. You can do it. And it's over time, the reassurance that we have that the things they achieve are good enough, that we trust them to achieve things and put them in situations where they have a chance to practice. That's what builds resilience. And inherently, those children going to Jewish schools and doing these alarms, they've already got the resilience. They're already doing it and doing something awful and surviving it.
Yeah.
And we underestimate how big a deal that is. And also we underestimate how much it's impacting them, I think, in some ways as well.
Yeah. It's still, it's one of the things that really blows my mind about Jewish schools in this country, that I think other people just have
nobody knows. If you're not Jewish, you don't realise it's even happening.
But this is happening to kids every day.
And it's not just the older children who can understand what's going on, it's all the children from nursery hiding under tables. I used to have this, I've never said this to anyone before, but I'm going to say it now. I used to have this big cupboard in my classroom at Wolfson Hillel. And obviously the protocol was to put the children under the table, but I used to have dreams where I put all the children in the cupboard. I had this huge cupboard with a lock. I used to have lots and lots of panic dreams where I would imagine myself basically carrying all the children and putting them in the cupboard and locking the door. Because it would genuinely would have been the safest place to put them in an intruder alarm. But the idea that I even had to think about that's part of the reason that I stopped working in Jewish schools, because the dreams I would have about protecting the children from an intruder, they were too invasive. I obviously was insufficiently resilient to be the person who could do that for an extended amount of time. And once I trained to be a therapist, I didn't need to be in Jewish schools anyway. Although I worked for Arts Therapies for Children, which is an incredible charity that provides therapy for Jewish schools and Jewish children's schools, and it's amazing. And I love working for them. They're amazing, most incredible charity that helps families all over the country. But it was an actual relief for me to not have to work in Jewish schools because of the pressure and fear that at some point, and there was one week when my blinds weren't working. And I didn't realise, and then we had an intruder alarm, and you're meant to pull down the blinds, and I was just like,
I can't do it.
If this had actually been a real alarm, the blinds didn't work, and that could have been the reason why the children in my class would not be here.
Protected.
It's rough, and we're expecting people to do this with no training, with tiny children. And it's just because we're Jewish, and all of it's
that it just shouldn't be happening.
You're not, but it's very similar to, I guess, being a teacher in America, and with gun crime, and the idea that we're asking people to do the most important job of all time, which is look after our children, but because they're Jewish, they now have to do it under these circumstances. Is absolutely shocking, and of course, it's anxious making for everybody.
How have you been supporting parents and children who are anxious about those kind of things?
So I'm very lucky. The truth is, I'm very lucky that we live in England, which is that there is this feeling of separation. If I was working in Israel with children, I think it would be much, much harder to provide the facts that make it feel safe. And I'm lucky that I work as a Jewish therapist in London for that reason in this context. So
I think one of the things that WEETO actually does is a big part of their work at the moment is obviously supporting in terms of dealing with children who are experiencing trauma because of the fallout post.
You can understand the fallout is absolutely insane and awful and painful and horrifying. If anyone can be taken from their bed in the middle of the night, how would you ever sleep again?
Can't imagine it.
It's mad. It's an insane thing. But the thing is, I've been lucky that I work as a therapist in England because I can put that distance between the children and the awful things that have happened. And so it is incredibly unlikely that you'd be taken as a hostage in the UK. It just is incredibly unlikely. It's not going to happen. I think it's even fair to say I don't think it's going to happen. Can I bet them my house it won't happen? No, but I'm pretty sure it won't happen. So when I give a child a fact that I want them to be able to hold on to help their brain relax about these awful things, I want to give them something that's really true. I don't want to give them something that's not true, that I've made it up, that it feels fantastical, because then they can't believe me about the other things that I'm going to say to them. So I'm trying to first put the distance between the horrible event and that child.
Yeah.
Then I'm also trying to show them that the people that are on their team, like their parents, are capable of looking after them.
Yeah.
So things like, actually, your house is incredibly safe. I've spoken to your parents. They've got a video doorbell. They lock the front door at night time. And I'm absolutely sure that in your own bed, you're going to be safe.
Yeah.
I can only say that if I know their parents have those things, if I know their parents are taking it seriously. And
which they obviously are, if they've come into you
exactly
to help them.
And also I will have already spent time on the phone with their parents talking about these things, making sure that they're sensible people, and also changing things in their home that I don't think are right, which is not very common in Jewish families. There are often families doing fabulous things. But the idea is that if there's anything, the way they're doing bedtime, the way they talk about bedtime, the way the evening runs, that means it's much less calming and much too stressful, or they as a family, we always blah, 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 and that thing would be great. But a few hours earlier, I can just explain that to families. And I've already started to put things in place to make it feel safer and nicer before I even meet the child.
Yeah.
And then the idea after that is to speak to the child, work out where the bits are that don't make sense. So, for example, I work in Mill Hill, and one of the best facts I have about Mill Hill, which works for all the children that I see with all this anxiety, is one of the biggest police stations in London is in Mill Hill. It's just next to the RAF Museum on that thing. And it's also the site of the police university. So in the week, there are not just like 100 policemen in Mill Hill. There's like thousands of policemen in Mill Hill.
Yeah.
And the children that live near me, who come and see me in Mill Hill, they live in Hendon.
They know
there's a million policemen. We're going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Obviously, you have to be from the kind of family that believes in the police for that fact to work.
Yeah.
You have to not have experienced racism from the police for that to work for you.
Yeah.
But for young children who generally believe in the police, the feeling that there's a huge police station, and it's true, I'm not pretending, they can drive past it on their way home and see it.
Yeah.
It's a fact. There's the police station, there's the police college. It's very close to our homes. It means we're much more likely to be safe. And it's true. And I'm not pretending, it's actually true. So I'm trying to first find facts. I'm second trying to reassure them that their parents have got this, which in almost every case I've ever worked with Jewish families, they've got this.
Yeah.
We've got capable parents with degrees, with years of work, with experience. I spoke to this family this week. The mother used to be doing something like... she used to be the head of some massive company, like managing like 50 people, 100 people, 1,000
Highly
people.
accomplished.
The dad was like a huge developer. He'd done this huge development. I said to them, you've got the skills. Let's not pretend you guys aren't capable. You're calling me like, oh, we don't know what we're doing. You guys know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're just not applying it to how we parent.
Yeah.
Most Jewish parents are incredibly capable, and they underestimate themselves in a parenting context, despite the fact that they do
that,
a million things all the time, and they're great parents, and they're great at their jobs, and they've got all these skills, and they forget about it when their child is standing by the front door screaming, saying they won't put their socks on.
Yeah.
They just forget that they're really capable.
Yeah.
So sometimes I remind them that they're really capable, and sometimes I remind their children that they're really capable. And sometimes there's like an interesting dynamic where children will decide, because they can't see how capable their parents are, that they should be in charge.
Yeah.
So they're like, I'll be in charge, but I'm actually only 4, and I definitely shouldn't be in charge. So I want to be in charge because there's something missing between like what I think my parents can offer me and what I need, because my parents aren't telling me how great they are and showing me how great they are, because they look really stressed all the time. And so I will decide to be in charge.
That well.
And I'm 4 years old, and so that's great, except that it's not great because I'm 4 and I literally can't be in charge.
Yeah.
So often I say to children, it seems to me there's been a funny situation at your house, which is that you've decided that you should be in charge. I might even say, who is in charge at your house? And the child will say, me, I'm in charge of my house. And I'm like, you are far too little to be in charge of. House. So I'll say, that's really interesting because, there are some things that children can't be in charge of. Do you know what they are? There are some things. For example, imagine that we were in the kitchen and a big vase smashed on the floor, a huge vase. Yeah. Do you think that it would be a good thing for you to be in charge of that? And then they say, no, that'd be terrible. Mm-hmm. And why? Why would it be bad? It wouldn't be great. What would happen? I might cut my hand. That's right. You're right, you would. You would cut your hand on the floor and it would be bleeding. And then could you be in charge of all the bleeding? No.
Yeah.
And could you drive yourself to the hospital? No.
Yeah.
Do you know who could? Your mum and your dad.
Yeah.
They get to be in charge because they know how to do the difficult things.
Yeah.
They will teach you by the time you're an adult to sweep up a smashed vase and pick it up without cutting yourself and drive a car so you can get to the hospital. But until you can do those things, you're not in charge and you can't be in charge.
Yeah.
And there's this huge feeling of relief for these children because then they remember they're not meant to be in charge, and great news, everyone else gets to look after them, and fantastic news. And they forget. And it comes, in my opinion, from this accidental information from parents, which is like, oh, I'm so terrible. Oh, I forgot the PE kit again. Oh, mommy's done a bad day again. You're allowed to forget things and still be a capable parent. You don't have to drag yourself for your children's entertainment.
Yeah.
You can say, oh, what a shame, I've forgotten the PE kit. Oh, well, mummy will grab it, bring it later. Mummy will sort it out, always sort things out.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to collapse your entire personality as a parent because you've made one mistake or even a few mistakes, or you're always late for school. Doesn't mean you're not a good parent and you're not a capable person. And when we take that feeling of our ability out of our parenting, even though we have it, and often parents just aren't broadcasting it. They've done 1,000 things. They've washed all the uniforms. They've got all the snacks. They've got every single thing. They've filled in the permission slip. And they just don't tell their children. They just do it quietly. And then their children miss out on all their capableness and how much they've got to offer for them. And then children feel anxious because they feel like their parents aren't doing anything. But actually, the parents are doing 1,000 things. They're just not broadcasting it. So sometimes I broadcast for parents. Your mum is so amazing. Look at your mum. She does everything. Look at your incredible mum. And sometimes I say, you know, and have you noticed all the fabulous things that happen in your house? And one of the other ones is, for example, with children with separation anxiety. They sometimes feel like if their parent isn't there, they're not being looked after. That's just not correct. So I show them very clearly. And when you were at school, your mum, your dad went to the supermarket and got all of the snacks. So there are snacks there. Did he buy the snacks that he likes? No, he bought the snacks that I like. That's right. And that's because even when he can't see you, he's still looking after you. And then we break this feeling that they're alone and no one's looking after them and it doesn't matter because they've got this highly capable parent who parents them when they can't see them, which means you can go out for dinner with your friends occasionally and still be a mum or a dad. And we say the things out loud that we want our children to understand so that they know that they're a fact. And then once we've got this sort of understanding of how capable we are, how far we are away from the problem and all the things that are going to happen to make life feel better, children feel a lot better. I can see from your face, you feel a lot better already. You already feel better.
I'm relaxed.
Here we are, we're so relaxed. And then we try and do things physically that make them feel relaxed, like time cuddling together on the sofa, family walks outside, long baths, time with music on, so that the brain and the body will marry up with the idea that there is no danger, there's no fear. We're not the prey of a predator that's coming to get us. Even as Jews, most days we're not the prey of predators coming to get us. Even if we feel that way, actually you can still go and sit in your house and have a cup of tea most days. We can allow ourselves to shut the door of the front door of our houses and give ourselves this time to recover from being a publicly facing Jew in the world or being a parent in the world.
Which it does feel like that for
100%.
Right now.
But I think let yourself go into your house, lock the front door and say, there isn't literally someone outside my door trying to get me. It feels like it. When I go on my phone, it's an attack. When I go and read the newspaper, it's awful. When I turn on the radio, it's awful. I'm going to turn off all those things. I'm going to lock the door of my house and I'm going to give myself the physical opportunity to recover. I'm going to give myself a long bath. I'm going to read a book that I like. I'm going to watch TV without scrolling on my phone. I'm going to give myself the chance to see I'm allowed to recover from the way that the world feels at the moment by giving myself space and peace and reminding myself I am not the prey. Yes, people don't like my politics or they think they don't like my religion. They think they don't like this or that. But I am not the prey and I'm not going to let myself be the prey.
And what are the kind of main reasons that children are...
Why are children not going to school? So there's lots of good reasons why children don't want to go to school. My main feeling about school avoidance or emotionally based school avoidance or refusal, whatever term you want to use, is that COVID was the first time in history that we told children that schools weren't safe. So even if you think about the Second World War, yes, children didn't go to their own schools. They were evacuated to the countryside, but they went to school in the countryside. We didn't say schools are not safe. You may not go to school. We said you can't go to your school in the centre of London or, whatever, but you can go to school in Devon. For example, I don't know if there were very good schools during, I'm not necessarily a World War II school expert, but let's say.
In the Lake District.
Somewhere like that. But it was the only time in history that since children were afforded the right of going to school, that we've said, don't go to school. And so we undermine the feeling that schools are a naturally safe place, and we also show children that school is optional in some way, which had literally never been before. And it isn't. Legally, children have to go to school. For most children, it's definitely the best system. Do I think you can be a fantastic homeschooler? Yes, but it's not that common. Most homeschoolers are just trying their best and they're not qualified teachers. They might be, they might not be. It's very hard to be a very good homeschooler, I think, just because the structures aren't there for you and the government isn't necessarily supportive of that either. So it's very hard to manage. And the second that children don't go to school, everybody's life changes in that family.
Yeah.
The parents have to work out who's going to school and who isn't, who's going to work and who isn't. Siblings of that child, just like we talked about, will notice the chaos and danger around school and wonder if it's dangerous for them to go to school.
Yeah.
And the issue I find with children who have EBSA is that they want to go to school, but they can't.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't want to go to school. They're not truanting. They don't
Yeah.
want to go out and, smoke under the bridge with friends. It's the exact opposite. They would love to go to school, but their anxiety, the feeling that there's some sort of lion waiting at the gate to eat them as they come into school, the danger, the feeling that school is dangerous stops them from going to school.
Yeah.
And before that, before COVID, were there children that didn't go to school? Yes, but not very many. And the reasons were probably more obvious, like they were failing all their subjects, they didn't have support to get to school, something traumatic had happened at school. And those things happen now, but the idea that there's this option for children not to go to school is much more available. And the idea that you might say, I don't want to go to school, and we're in a generation of parents that are more likely to listen, is also a difference. So previously, if it was the 90s and you said to your parents, or the 80s or the 70s, I don't want to go to school, your parents would say, you're going, get in the car.
Tough.
But now we're in a generation of parents where the point is listening to our children. We're trying to listen, empower them, make sure we listen to their feelings, that they know their feelings. So it's very hard when your child says, I don't want to go to school, for you to then be like, tough, get in the car. Because the whole point of what parenting is like now is this respectful, time listening, believing their feelings parenting, which means that you can't then just sweep what they've said under the rug. So far more parents trying to do that kind of parenting will have to give more airtime and organisation to the idea that their children don't want to go to school if they say so. The other thing I think is this feeling of like constant anxiety for children that then asking them to do the things that they would usually do suddenly becomes too much.
Yeah.
And I also think that part of the reason children don't go to school is if you are neurotypical, the reason children stop going to school is because something bad has happened at school or at home. If you are neurodivergent, the reason people stop going to school is because they can't take any more of the difficulty of being neurodivergent in a school context.
Yeah.
And that's because there's a sort of build-up for children with neurodivergence of noise, sensation, interaction with other people, structure that's not clear, all these things that are very difficult for children with ADHD, or autism, with dyslexia, dyspraxia, all the things that are difficult and different in the brain for children to deal with in schools are very obvious. So there's a point for children with neurodivergence where suddenly it's too much. They kind of go over a threshold that they're comfortable with of loud noises or eating in public or lots of things. And with children with neurodivergence, we're sort of trying to strip back the experience of going to school so they can manage it. And for children who are neurotypical, we're trying to work out what was the thing that made them worried in the first place and can we counter that more directly.
And so for someone like you, how do you work with the school to best support
So
children?
it depends on the school and depends on the child. So first I would speak to the parent about what's been going on. Then I would usually meet the child and see what has happened from their perspective. Was it a particular incident at home, like their parents were getting divorced, so they just wanted to stay at home to see what was going on, and they thought maybe if they were at home rather than at school, their parents might not get divorced? Or was it that the PE coach shouted them last week and it made them embarrassed and they don't want to go to school? Is it something obvious? Is it something not obvious? Sometimes it's a sort of thematic response to school, like you went to a really lovely tiny primary school and now you're going to secondary school and it just feels different. You can't really, it's not one thing. It's not that the classrooms are too loud. The whole thing is different. Yeah. Okay, so I take what they say, I think about it very carefully, and then I make an actual plan. So often it's things like, what do you think you could tolerate in a school context? Could you tolerate just one afternoon lesson a week for now, and then we'll build up, and then we try to sort of spread from what they could tolerate outwards. So I wouldn't necessarily assume that a child with EBSA would be able to go to the first lesson of the day, but they might be able to come in from break time and then do the next two. That's better than just coming in for the first one. If we change the schedule enough and then we spread. So we'd say, actually we've got 2 lessons and then lunchtime, why don't you also stay for lunch? Then we'd say, actually after lunch we've got, science, why don't you also stay for science? And then eventually we've got a 4-hour day for a child that was coming in for nothing.
Yeah. How receptive are schools to?
More and more receptive. Some schools think they're being receptive, but they're not. And by that, they'll be like, yes, they can come in from reduced timetable, but it has to be first thing in the morning. Well, that's not going to work for lots of children with EBSA. And then some schools are over-responsive at the moment. So we're in a very fluxy place with this children not going to school thing because it's so new and also suddenly very prevalent in a way that we didn't expect. That we're in a situation where some schools are like overreacting, and that's the thing I've been countering more this year than last year. So last year I was trying to convince schools to go for minimal timetables and whatever, and from this September I'm calling schools and I'm like, let's not do everything at once. So they're like, oh, so they don't want to come in for one day, okay, they don't have to come in for the whole week. I'm like, no, slow down. They're going to come in for 4 lessons instead of 5. They're going to, and schools are sort of throwing the kitchen sink at EBSA children, and actually that stresses them out a lot, because the feeling that school don't know what they're doing and that their plan is sort of too plannish is too much. So the idea, my big feeling has always been with things like this, and really any issue that's coming up with children, is what's the smallest possible change we could make first, and see if that's enough. So your child doesn't like separating from you in the morning before school. Would getting there 5 minutes earlier and having them as the first person in the classroom be better? Or would hanging back and being the last people that come into the playground, so they've kind of got to rush in, would that be better? It's a small change, hardly does anything. One of them would give you an extra 2 minutes getting the shoes on before you leave the house. One would give you minus an extra 2 minutes. But would that be enough to change that thing where they stand outside the class and, but mommy, I don't want you to go? Would that be enough? It might be enough.
Yeah.
Do we need a whole system where they walk through the reception and they say high five to the school dog? No, we can just try 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later and see if that's enough.
Yeah.
If that's enough, we've done it. We don't have to do anything else.
Yeah.
If that's not enough, I'll talk to you about whether he has to go and say high five to the school dog on the way in.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you about that later. But let's try the smallest possible change. And with children with EBSA, the smallest possible change is things like going in once all the other children are already in, so you don't have to have the chaos of the playground. Or it's starting the day at 10 so they can sleep in the morning because they're not sleeping at night time.
Yeah.
It's a small change that means they haven't lost out on the entire structure. So school is meant to provide 4 particular chemicals to children's brains. It's meant to provide dopamine from being successful. It's meant to provide oxytocin from having good relationships, so successful in tests, successful in the classroom, putting your hand up and getting the answer right. Oxytocin from good relationships and seeing your friends every day. Endorphins from physical exercise of running around in the playground and planned PE. And serotonin from feeling calm in the building. Children with EBSA are probably not getting any of those things from school. They're either not academic or too overwhelmed to learn. They are not doing well socially because they're in and out of school and they're embarrassed about it. They probably aren't participating in a lot of PE and sport, particularly if they're at home most of the time. Most parents will just let them sit at home because they're worried about them. They don't then take them for a run around the block, so they're not getting any endorphins, and they're not finding school to be calming and supportive as it's meant to, so they're not getting serotonin. So we're trying to build up those things slowly again so they remember why the structure of school works for us. And it works for most children for those reasons. Some children it doesn't work for because they can't access those 4 chemicals from being at school. But in theory, if you go to a good enough school, your children should be full of dopamine from feeling successful in their work, full of oxytocin from having lots of friends, full of endorphins from doing enough physical exercise, and full of calm feelings in the classroom because the structures are clear, they know what's happening next, it's usually the same, the teacher's the same. When they don't have that, what's the point of them going to school anyway? So we're trying to restore that feeling with the smallest possible changes and reassurance. I had a child come recently who said, there's one teacher in the school who is just too shouty and I just can't go. It was actually just gone to secondary and there was this very shouting teacher. And I said, I'm going to write him a letter and tell him he's not allowed to shout at you. And she went, okay. And then she just went to school. We didn't do a change of timetable. We didn't say she didn't have to go to his lessons. I said to her, he's obviously trying to make sure the class is well behaved. You're going to be well behaved anyway. If we know that, we know he's not going to shout at you. So I'm going to ask him to make an agreement with me that he's not going to shout at you. And she went, okay. And that was enough. It was one change. It was one phone call. I spoke to the man. He said he wasn't going to shout at her anyway. Everyone knew it was fine. That was the end of that conversation. And she went to school normally after that with no problem. Sometimes it's harder and we need other things in place, more structures, a whole list of things a school are going to do, a safe place for that child to go. It doesn't matter to me what we do as long as we make sure that that child has ticked all the fears off their list and they can now go back to school if they're meant to go back to school. And if they're not, then I want to make sure that the structures they have at home are good enough to manage their education.
You spoke a little bit about, like parenting styles, like the modern, how we parent is probably quite a bit different to how our parents parented, where we are more in touch with feelings and being sort of child-led. But do you think, one of the things I kind of often think about, and I wouldn't say struggle with as a parent, but I'm constantly mindful of, like, how much to give that, because obviously children still need boundaries. And do you see that being a problem? And creating more anxiety.
It's not exactly
sometimes.
a problem, but I think it's this thing that we don't want our children to feel like they're in charge of us, because that's too powerful and that makes children anxious. So we want our children to see very clearly, we've heard what they've said. I don't like this. I don't like peas. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't like peas. Okay. What am I going to do with that information now? Am I going to say you never have to eat peas again? That's too big a response. A bit like you don't have to go back to school.
Yeah.
It's too big a response. Again, what's the smallest possible change I can do that means that I'm still in charge, they get listened to, and I haven't just brought everything into chaos. And I've also shown that I know what I'm doing, which I don't most of the time. I'm just pretending like everybody else. But I might say, oh gosh, you really don't like those peas. Gosh, that's a shame. Okay, well, let's not have any today, right? I haven't made any statement about what I'm planning to do about peas for the rest of my life. I've made the smallest possible change.
Yeah.
And I've managed to stay calm. I haven't said, you never eat your peas. You're the worst. Your brother's eating peas. Look at him. I'm not doing any of that. I'm just saying, okay, today we won't.
Yeah.
Let's see how we feel about them next time.
Yeah.
And I think that could be quite similar to how we should respond to basically everything, whether it's the peas or something much more extreme. I think I'd say, okay, I've heard you. That's interesting. And if it's something very big, like I'm not planning on taking GCSEs, for example, which, that might be that's obviously not necessarily a best plan for everybody. Then I'd say we've heard what you said, that you don't want to take your GCSEs. Sadly, you don't get to decide that by yourself. Like, I can hear what you're saying. I understand what you're saying about it. You don't want to. It feels too stressful. There's lots of things. My feeling is we've got lots of problems that are hiding behind one bigger problem, which means that me and Dad also need to talk it through as well. So we're going to talk, and then we're going to come back and have this conversation in a minute without shouting, everyone takes GCSEs. I can't believe you would say that. Have you met yourself? You're very academic. We're not going to do that. We're going to stop. We're going to say, okay, yeah, gosh, you've said something that sounds to me like a really big deal. I wonder whether you've been thinking about it for a while, and you were also wondering about what we were going to say about it. We now need to talk about it, because this is absolutely not the kind of decision you get to make by yourself.
Yeah.
You actually don't get to make this decision at all, but we will take your opinion into account. So if you give us a chance to talk about it, we'll come back with questions and we'll see if we can work out a plan together. And there's a really amazing therapist from America called Dan Hughes, and his sentence, and I love it, and I say it all the time with clients and with my kids, is, I'm clever, you're clever, we'll work it out.
Yeah.
So it empowers both of us.
Yeah.
We're both clever. We're both capable. Let's work something out.
Yeah.
We'll be able to fix this because I'm clever and you're clever, and we'll do it together, rather than I'm deciding and you're not, or you get all the power. It's both. It's this feeling of collaboration, which means whatever weird thing comes up in life will give us hundreds of weird things, thousands of weird things. I'm clever and you're clever, and we'll work it out together. Is enough, in my opinion, for most things that come up for kids and for adults, and also gives us a bit of time. You don't have to decide, and you also don't have to respond.
Yeah.
So you'd say, whoa, that's a big one. Okay, well, I'm going to need some time to think about it, but you're clever and I'm clever. We'll work it out together. Let me talk to Daddy and we'll come back to you.
Yeah.
So you don't let it blow up. You and also it shows over the years that you believe that there's a way through everything.
Yeah.
Which is resilient.
Yeah. No, it's really good. Really good line.
I like it.
Yeah. Social media is obviously a really big thing.
Yeah.
To what extent do you think that plays a role in creating anxiety in children, and
I think,
and just like screen time in general? Obviously, different ages, different
stages. So there's
stages.
all different. There are more and more studies that show that screen time is bad for children and teens, but obviously those studies are kind of looking for that as well.
Yeah.
They're hoping to show that so they can then tell parents, hey, don't do that, which is useful, because I'd rather know than not know. But I think there's my number one feeling about screens is all screens are not created equally. So a screen this big is definitely not as good for development as a large screen everyone's watching together, or going to the cinema as a family outing shouldn't feel like a terrible parenting move.
Yeah.
The other thing is, watching something alone is very different developmentally to watching it with a brother or sister or with your whole family. So screens in rooms away from other people, definitely not equal to a large family TV where we're all watching, strictly together.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing. And should parents feel like there should never be screens, I put the screens in the bin, sometimes, something happens, like, for example, a vase breaks in the kitchen and you just need 5 minutes to clean it up without anybody stepping on it.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be the only reason we ever put the TV on. Sometimes we're allowed to watch TV. I like watching TV.
Yeah.
I love TV. I always have since I was a kid.
Yeah.
I watched a lot of TV as a kid. I'm pro telly.
Yeah.
Do I think children should watch TV all the time? No. I think there should be some sort of structure around it, so that my big feeling is when children have access to TV all the time, there are so many things they don't do.
Yeah.
right?
Go outside.
Go outside, make something, read a book, fight with their brothers and sisters, which is great for development,
Yeah.
you know, all that sort of thing. And is it okay that sometimes they're allowed to switch off and do things? Of course, so are you.
Yeah.
You're a human, they're human. But sometimes we don't know what our children are watching, and it's very different from when we were kids, where there were like, I don't know, 5 children's TV channels for only a certain amount of hours of the day. And it was just programs for children, and they were designed for children. Even if they were American ones, they were a bit more salacious, exciting.
Yeah.
They were still for children. And our parents knew we were watching Saved by the Bell, which was not going to have anything that shocking. You know, there was that one episode about the drugs.
Yeah.
But that was it, right? The difference between what our children can access online now and what we had when we were kids, which was basically 5 TV programs over and over in a loop that our parents knew what they were, is totally different. If your children are on YouTube Shorts, they could see anything. When they say it's Wild West, they're not joking. It's an actual Wild West. Anything could be on there. Porn, rape content, inappropriate videos of killing. I mean, literally anything. Even on children's YouTube, there have been people using them to find, to see what their children can find. There could be all manner of strange things that your children can come up against if they're given an iPad or a TV or a computer
device,
alone,
yeah.
and there's nobody checking, and you haven't put limits on what they're watching, how they're watching it, and what they tell you about it. So obviously, I think that parents should have far more control over the amount of hours of screen time their children have, and also specifically what content they're watching, particularly if it's on apps. If your child is watching BBC iPlayer, I'd be far less worried about your parenting than if you're like, my child spends hours on Roblox and YouTube.
Yeah.
Are you a bad parent for doing that? Absolutely not. But do you know exactly who your child's favourite YouTuber is? What kind of content they're making? Is it worth them watching it?
Yeah.
You know, I had a child tell me the other day something like, on Friday at 5 p.m, blah, 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 about a game, and all this information about a particular game on Roblox. If that parent had read that child a book, that child would know that as well. Was that child also being read books? I hope so.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they weren't. But I think this thing about, like, what are we pouring into our children's heads is really interesting. And the amount our children have to take in, like big sponges, we get to choose what we put in there. So do you want your children, you know, full of Italian brain rot and weird stuff from the internet?
Yeah.
Or do you want them to, like, watch something good from your childhood? Think about your favourite films. Think about the series that you watched when you were a kid and why you like them, and find something similar that sort of you remember that was worth something.
Yeah.
I don't mean there should be no TV, but I would think, what are they watching? What's the point of what they're watching? And if it's just to, like, zone out and not be involved, why do I want my children to be like that?
Yeah.
Could we not all just watch a TV program as a family and then talk about it at dinner time? I'm not saying no one should watch TV or use a computer. And they've just had this amazing study, and it's just been rolling out in certain boroughs of London, where there's a video game. It's like on your phone for children to play who've got anxiety, and it's a CBT video game. I've just downloaded it. I'm gonna have a look at it and see if it's any good. So far, I'm just gonna give it a good try. I'm not really a video game person, so maybe I'm not the right person to test it out. But there are things we can do that mean that we let our children have this time to relax, but that we're not just letting them do anything. In exactly the same way that I wouldn't just let them eat anything from my fridge at any time, or just go in the freezer and eat a whole load of ice cream. I have to think, what are my children consuming in other contexts? And am I in charge of it in the same way that I would be about how I know how many vegetables my children have had this week? Do I know how many video games my children played, what the video games are, what's going on inside them? Do they have swear words? Can people talk to them during it? What have they seen? And I don't know. If I don't know what they're watching, I don't know. So I
think our generation are a lot more aware of the kind of dangers of social media and online. I think it's actually like that sort of Gen Z who grew up with access to it, where parents didn't necessarily know. I don't think that's right. I think lots of children are consuming really inappropriate things. And I know because they tell me. So I think we could assume that we all know how to put on the parenting locks, and so we should. And yet there are still children who've got phones and iPads in their rooms till late in the night looking at really weird stuff. And maybe it's not porn, and maybe it's not death or bleeding, but it's gross and weird, and it's probably not for children. And it's exactly like the algorithm makes us scroll when we're on our TikTok or our Instagram, but for children. And they've got no capacity to work out what's true or false, whether it's clean or not clean, whether it's appropriate or not appropriate. The person who does that is us. So we have to, like, no. I don't think that's right. I think lots of parents think they've set everything up properly, and the internet is a much more dangerous place than we think. So you might think, of course my children don't have talking on Roblox, for example, so that means they're safe. That's completely incorrect, because Roblox is an open source platform where anyone can put any game on Roblox and your child can play it.
right? Anyone. I can make a disgusting, gross thing, and your children will think it's a game, and they'll play it, and they'll think it's normal because it's on Roblox.
Yeah.
We're basically saying Roblox is a safe thing because it's for children. That's not correct. It's incorrect. There are predators on Roblox. There's lots of really gross stuff going on that particular website. More, I would say the issues we really have are with YouTube, TikTok and Roblox, and also children on X, which I don't know why children would ever be on X, because basically X is just full of porn. But you know, if your children are accessing anything, even that says it's for children, it's not for children, because they're also commodifying your children's time in exactly the same way that other apps are, with absolutely no scruples about the idea that they just want your kids' eyes on it, and they'd rather show them something gross than something careful because they can. The example is like Squid Games. So Squid Games is clearly an adult program for adults. It's incredibly gory. It came out on Netflix. It's about a battle royale where at the end is everyone will die and one person will win, and they'll get the money at the end of the game. Within one day, there were games on Roblox that were the full acting story of Squid Games, and any child could play them of any age with, and obviously it's Roblox, that's a bit more like, but even so, all the children I work with at schools were able to tell me the exact story of Squid Game, how many people died in each section, what the games were, within about a week of it coming out. And all those parents would have chosen not to show their child that on Netflix. They wouldn't have said, let's sit down and watch Squid Games with a 5-year-old.
No.
But children who are 5 playing Roblox will play Squid Games, Roblox games, because everyone's playing them, and their friends will say, have you played Squid Games? Because their parents weren't looking and you weren't looking either, and then everyone's playing them. So it's not your fault. It's not anyone's fault. We are not... I think because we're nice people, we assume the internet is a nice place, and it isn't, particularly in children's in online spaces. We assume that nice things will happen there. They won't. We have to just assume the absolute worst. You wouldn't let your child play video games with a stranger. So, you know, play a board game with a stranger in your house. I wouldn't let them play video games with a stranger in your house either. And that program Adolescence,
it was really good
has given everyone a big shock about the idea that your children can be filled with things in your house when you're not looking. But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying let's not underestimate it. It isn't just teenagers. It's all children with access to the internet in any unfiltered way are likely at some point to come up against something that they're not meant to see or speak to someone they're not meant to speak to.
What do you think then about the kind of campaigns for like smart-free childhood and all?
I think it's a great idea. I think I'm not saying no screens ever, and I'm also not saying don't let your children watch TV. I'm saying be in charge of the things your children consume, because we don't want to have to be cleaning up the mess of pornography, of
in 10 years
I spoke to a child recently who had watched a video of a plane crashing online or something like that. I can't remember, a ship crashing online. It was AI. It wasn't real, but his brain didn't know that. Our children are not meant to be able to assess whether AI is real or not. Most adults can't do it. At the moment, the internet is completely uncharted territory with AI coming in, and the kind of content and how quick it is to make content using AI. Your children could see any manner of things at any time, and if we assume that they won't just because it's on children's YouTube, we're deluding ourselves, because it's very dangerous, and you know, things for children online are not necessarily for children. I would make sure your children on things without adverts, so they're not just being trained to buy loads of things like YouTube. I would make sure that iPlayer is a really good example, and even Netflix, for example, is a good example, because there's no adverts. They're not being there's nothing else that can come in except the thing that you've chosen, but just make sure you know what they've chosen. Is basically what I'm saying.
No, it is.
I do not underestimate the internet for children.
It's a whole scary. It's a whole new world that you have to navigate.
So I would say hold off as long as possible. With smartphones, can you get your child a brick phone? Can you get your child a smartwatch that means you can track them on the way home from school? Don't give your children tech alone, really, ever. Like, have a rule that if they're using iPads, it's in the living room. Be across what your family are watching, and also think about top-down viewing. Like, the children who are the youngest should be allowed to watch what's on the TV. So there shouldn't be anything on the TV that's for children older than your youngest child if everyone's in the living room. Because they're not ready. You think they are because their sibling is watching whatever it is. They're not. They're little, and we mustn't forget just because they've got older siblings that they should be exposed to things that are older for them. So that everyone should be, the things on the TV should be appropriate for the youngest person in the room whenever the TV's on.
What are some of the biggest mistakes you see parents make? I'm not encouraging you to.
No. I would never say that. No.
Insult them.
The big thing is not saying how good you are. Not saying how good you are at the things that you do. Letting your children underestimate you. because it makes everyone feel less capable and everyone feel less looked after, which actually is not correct.
Yeah.
I'm often showing children their parents working out, like the maths behind what they see, you know, like show your workings. That's what I'm telling parents to do. Show what you're doing. Talk about how well you've done. I had the most legendary shop at the supermarket today. You know, I'm not underestimating any of the work that parents have to do. Parenting is incredibly difficult and constant, and plate spinning, and, you know, tell your children about the plates you're spinning. Tell them how well you did. Tell them how well you did at your office. Tell them how well you did, you know, helping, you know, you went to go and see your grandma and help her clear out her flat. Tell them that you did really well. Show them how skilled you are, because they're more likely to feel relaxed that you'll be able to help them another day.
And it's a really good, modelling for them, because
that's right. And being proud of yourself.
Will then.
And they'll tell you, like, I was so good today. I did an amazing French lesson. They'll tell you. I mean, don't cover their achievements with your own. Don't say, well, I've also done that. You know? But you know, be proud of yourself and show your children how capable you are, so that they know they can trust you to look after them.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. And just lastly, I'd love to just talk a little bit about the dynamic, hopefully a fun conversation, the dynamic of you and your mum working together.
Yeah, it's mad. It's crazy. It's such fun, and it's so unexpected for me, and I think even more for her. You know, when she thinks about what I'm doing, she's expecting me to just be in a classroom teaching some small children, you know, how to read. And then there I am, you know, sitting with her on the sofa on her TV show, or doing the podcast with her at Global. And it's a huge surprise for both of us. We're really not expecting it, but we're really enjoying it. We hang out a lot anyway. We hang out anyway a lot. We see each other multiple times a week, maybe 3 times a week anyway, and we speak every day. We're very close. We always have been. Just like with my sister, we're all really, really close, and our kids are really, really close. And during COVID, I live with my sister, and our kids are like siblings. They're very, very, very nice. Cute with each other, very lovely. And the surprising element of just like hanging out with my mum in a work context is a shocker. It surprises me every single time we arrive to do something, and they let me in. I'm like, are you sure I should come in? Like, I'll wait outside for you. And it's good fun. It's a surprise, and it's good fun, and it gives us even more chance to be with each other, which we love. So it's fun.
And how is it talking about things like this, like parenting, and do you guys have quite an open relationship?
We have a very open relationship, and also we both had therapy, so it's not a secret to talk about feelings with each other.
Yeah, and that's a very Jewish thing to do.
A very Jewish to have a chat with your family. I think sometimes I want to keep a bit less, a bit more to myself. Because I'm a therapist and I'm not trying to share my own story, because I want my clients to come in and that I get to be sort of blank page, blank slate object for them, rather than like, you know, my parents are divorced, for example. I don't want my clients to be worried that if they come to talk to me about divorce, that might upset me. Right? It won't upset me. I've worked with lots of families who are divorcing. I've, you know, survived my own childhood. Everything's fine. I've had a lot of therapy, like most people. But I don't want other people to be worried about me, because that's not that. My job is to let people relax, and I can worry about them. So I'm happy to always share on the podcast about myself, but I don't want to share too much, because I don't think it's anyone's business. And I also haven't got permission from my children. I happen to do the podcast, but I don't know whether they will always be pleased for me to share things about them. So I'm very careful about what things I say about my children, and also what I say about myself, because it's my job and they're my life. So I'm always trying to think, how do I strike a balance of sharing stuff that's useful without sharing too much about myself and my children and my partner, my husband, because I want to be helpful and educational and help families literally all over the world with anxiety, because when your child is anxious, it makes you anxious in the most crazy way, and you want to support them and look after them. And it's very, very hard. And if I've managed to learn anything over the years of doing this job, which I hope I have, and I've managed to fill a book writing the things I love, which was quite an amazing thing. I want to share it with people so that they don't have to feel so worried. And then, because there is this feeling about, as soon as the parents calm down a bit at the top, everything in the house feels much better. Parents getting enough sleep, everyone does better. If the parents are eating well and they're not just rushing, everyone feels better. So the idea that I can help parents to have a plan, feel in control, show their best selves to their kids, and then everyone can feel much better. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, great. And what about, we've talked a little bit about your kind of sense of identity and culture. You've been really open, which is really nice. But do you feel that you're able to be that open in contexts that aren't kind of Jewish?
I'm very proudly Jewish. I always have been. I never keep it a secret. And I'm a really amazing friend of mine made me a beautiful Magen David. She's an Israeli designer. She's called Noah Sivan. She's a beautiful, gorgeous person, but she also makes incredible jewellery. She's in Israel.
Amazing.
And she made me a beautiful Magen David for my birthday just after October 7th. And I wore it every single day. Proudly. It just broke, otherwise I'd be wearing it today. I highly recommend, if you need a beautiful Magen David, a ham.
I do actually.
My friend Noah Sivan is the one. She is the one. She's in Israel. She'll send it to you. She's fab. But I proudly wore it through all of the most difficult months.
Yeah.
And and people I know said to me, "Are you sure you want to wear it?"
Yeah.
And I wore it anyway, because I'm not pretending anything to anyone. I'm proud to be Jewish, proud of my history, I'm proud of my family, and I'm not going to let anybody tell me how to be myself, particularly with my Jewish identity. And I'm very, very proud to be Jewish. I'm not massively religious. I love to celebrate. I'm very culturally Jewish.
Yeah.
I advocate for my Jewish, my children and their Jewishness. I advocate for myself and my Jewishness. I will always try and support community things that are Jewish.
Yeah.
I go into my children's school and teach about Chagim. I do anything that I was a Cheder teacher for over 10 years at New London Cheder. I'm a proud Jewish person, and I'm not pretending not to be for anybody. And only a few weeks ago I went on TV to talk about the attack in Manchester, and I didn't say I can't do it, I don't want to tell anyone I'm Jewish. I immediately went in to talk about it and how we talk to children about terrorism and how we help children get through scary things.
I think it's really brave, because I think a lot of people don't feel that confident to do it.
I'm very, very proud to be Jewish, and I'm proud of my experiences in life and family and friends in Israel and everything that comes with. It's very hard to decide how much of that you share publicly, because as soon as you do, there's always hate, there's always things that come back, and it's a very big shock when you know something and you feel something so factually and passionately yourself. When people feel that what you believe is horrible or abhorrent, it's very upsetting, particularly when, as a person, I'm really trying every day to make the world nicer.
Yeah.
I don't believe that my opinions or my beliefs are abhorrent. I protect anyone, I look after anyone, I'm sad for anyone's loss. And the idea that like the things I believe are abhorrent to other people, it's awful, it feels awful. And so I know that lots of people have felt absolutely rough just trying to be themselves in the last 2 years, and I see you. I feel it. I feel it the same way. And so, I am careful about what I share, but I've always been proudly Jewish and like publicly Jewish to everybody, and I would never change that for anything. I'm very proud to be Jewish.
Here.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a fascinating
big
chat
one.
with you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time and talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm feeling a lot less anxious.
I hope so. That's the plan. That's the plan. Everywhere I go, I'm just hoping to leave everyone just feeling a little bit less anxious.